Welcome to Outta Pocket. Here's your host, Michael Davis.
Welcome to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. After 199 days, we are back, and we are super excited. We are now 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, at your lunch break, talking about all the sports. We'll have a roundtable each day. And after this weekend, I decided to do a little Duke UNC panel, but of course I decided that after I saw the result. So we got Brendan O'Neill in with us. We got R.L. Bynum from the Tar Heel Tribune, and we have his co-host for the Believe in Heels Hoops podcast and the producer of Tobacco Road Sports Radio, Desmond Johnson, here with us. And I actually don't want to talk about the Duke UNC game, but that's another story. UNC swept the regular season series 84-79, beating Duke in Cameron Indoor. And I wanted to pose to you guys just a quick, what was your analysis of your team's performance? Brendan, Duke was on the losing side. How did you feel like Duke showed up to this game?
Well, they showed up really late. That's what I'll say. They showed up about 10 minutes into the game because, they went down 27-12 with about 9 minutes left in the first half. But after that, they outscored Carolina by 10 for the rest of the game. So really, they just dug themselves in a hole way too early, and they couldn't ever climb out of it. They got it close, down to 1 after a couple of buckets from Kyle Filipowski, but really nothing to show for after that.
Nothing to show for it. And of course, I'm sure RL and Desmond had a much better Saturday night than myself and Brendan did. RL, welcome to Outta Pocket. What was your analysis of this team? Because you've been covering them all throughout the season. What was your take on how they showed up in Durham?
Right. I was lucky to be courtside for that one. And, the first few minutes, UNC picked up where they left off in the first game and really showed that it's a veteran team. They were aggressive, dove for loose balls, tenacious on defense, particularly early. But, you add the shooting and intensity of Cormac Ryan to the bench contributions of Withers and Trimble. It's just a combination that Duke couldn't overcome. Duke's got more talent. They've got 2 projected first-round picks. But UNC's showed twice that it's a better team, and you got to give Hubert Davis a lot of credit for that. The response when Duke cut it to 1 with the 9-1 run was huge.
Yeah, and that's why I thought Duke was going to come back. Des, you have been very outspoken on social media, so I almost was trying to see if you wouldn't come on the show. I know you want to just lay it in with Duke fans, but what was your take?
No, not really. That's my thing. I get it out all the next day. Like, I don't get on social media if it's a night game, especially, and it's been a rule I've had really since the Austin Rivers game back in 2012. 2012. I don't get on social media immediately after Carolina Duke. I really don't get on after a Carolina game, period. Just emotions run high, up and down. I usually wait for the next day, and usually with Carolina and Duke, it's usually a Saturday night. So on Sunday morning, everybody knows what's about to happen. If we won the game, I'm getting on and doing what I'm going to do. But I don't insult the players. I don't insult the coaches. I don't really even insult the fans other than what happened during the post game that we'll get to here in just a little bit. It's all basically just UNC celebration type stuff, and it turns people the wrong way. They start to get into their feelings. They want to start insulting you on what you do for your livelihood and all this other stuff. When it all comes down to it, Carolina was the better team. It looked like a bunch of veterans playing a bunch of kids. It literally felt like that for most of the game. Duke was throwing the ball out of bounds, taking bad shots. They couldn't really defend very well. And Carolina defended very well. That was one of the better defensive games Carolina's played all season in terms of locking everybody down on Duke. So, and it felt like Duke was losing their composure a little bit. Kyle Filipowski in particular, they were never really in the game. And for Jeremy Roach's senior night, he was basically non-existent. Carolina was just a better team this year. They're a very bad matchup for Duke, and I said that after the first game.
And I feel like with UNC, every time I've seemed to watch them on TV, they played close games, and then the second half they pulled away by about 10 points. But from this wire to wire, North Carolina had it. 2 Pointers podcast. You can talk to us on our YouTube channel. What's up, everybody? Be a part of the show. Say hey to everybody. We'll have this 4 days a week. I do not like that renaming of Carmack Indoor. He was unstoppable this past weekend.
Did he get permission from Tyler Hansborough for the name change? Because I was under the impression it was Tyler Hansborough Indoor Stadium. Is that still?
Yeah, I mean, he put up 28 against Duke when he played for Notre Dame, so it wasn't the first time.
And that's the difference between this Carolina team and the Carolina teams from the past 2 years. The past 2 years, you needed Armando Bacot to give you 20-plus points, double-digit rebounds, and he had to be on the floor in order for them to have a chance to win. This year, it can come from one of 4 or 5 different guys that can give you 20 points. And you saw it on Saturday night with Cormac Ryan. Nobody was predicting Cormac Ryan was going to drop 31 on Duke, but it didn't surprise anybody from Carolina because we've seen Cormac. Harrison Ingram was the hero last Duke game. Like, you can't key in on one guy, and Duke tried to key in on R.J. Davis, and it failed.
Twice. Yeah, I mean, Virginia tried to do it. State tried to do it. Basically trying to lock down R.J. Davis, and he was limited in all 3 of those games. But as Desmond said, there are just too many weapons. It's not like last year where it had to be Caleb, R.J., or Bacot or nothing.
And in the 2 games this year, Harrison Ingram was the X factor in game 1. Cormac Ryan was the X factor in game 2. You're seeing YouTube comments pop up. Be a part of the show. Say what's up. Say hey. I saw one of those comments say Kyle Filipowski, and I have a bone to pick with this. I have an issue because everybody's going back to Grayson Allen when he would trip people, and yes, he did. Me and Brendan watched it. But this was not Kyle Filipowski's fault.
Oh, stop.
Okay, you cannot, as a UNC player, step over another Duke player and actually initiate contact and push down on Filipowski. Harrison Ingram had the entire court to work with. Now, I know R.L. and Des is going to disagree, but Brendan, back me up here. This was not on Filipowski.
I mean, obviously, did he trip him? Yeah, like he did. There's no denying that, but at the same time, if Kyle Filipowski had pushed Harrison Ingram in the back like that, it would have, been a different story. Like, say we're at the Dean Smith Center and Harrison Ingram or Kyle Filipowski end up on the ground. And I'm not saying Harrison Ingram to trip him, but if they ran over each other and Kyle put his hands on Harrison's back, it'd be a headline. It'd be like, why did Kyle Filipowski push Harrison Ingram down? But because of Kyle's reaction, and also just given the fact that when people get a chance to see something with Duke, they're going to take it and run with it. So I think, Kyle shouldn't have done that. No, like obviously he messed up, and I'm sure he got, chewed out in the locker room for doing that by Shire. But I think, Harrison Ingram shouldn't have jumped over him. I don't know why he thought that would have been smart. I get you're trying to get back and get on the play, but, initiating contact and trying to go directly over a player is never really going to end well.
I mean, Ingram did put his hand on Filipowski's back. I'll give you that. But that was nothing questionable. But then Filipowski raises his right leg like a dog about to do his business. I mean, not only was it a trip, he tried to kind of distract by acting like he was hurt there, which was really weird. But he did make a miraculous recovery. So, but we talked to Ingram outside the locker room after the game. He said he asked Ted Valentine about it, and Valentine told him he didn't see it. And then apparently, I wasn't there for that, but apparently Filipowski told reporters his foot slipped.
Okay. So 2 things. The reason this is why your take is out of pocket, Mike. For starters, this whole thing is based on Kyle Filipowski saying in his postgame that he didn't even know that Harrison was there. Yes, you did, because Harrison Ingram had pushed you 2 hands in the back. That's why you were raising your leg to begin with. So he's lying in the postgame. That's 1. Number 2, as 2 Pointers podcast said, the way that play went beforehand, stepping over him was the fastest way to get down the court. Why is he going to go all the way around Kyle Filipowski? He's not expecting him to get tripped. He's not expecting to raise his leg, but he did. He did it, and this is the second time in 2 weeks now where Kyle Filipowski's been involved in some sort of Duke heel type villain turn thing. It's almost like he's trying to lean into being the Duke villain, and he's not good at it. He's not good at it at all. Like he's not Grayson Allen, Christian Laettner level of Duke heel, and he's trying to get there, and he's not doing it. But the main thing I took from it, he lied in his postgame. He was like, I didn't know anybody was behind me. Yes, you did. You did know, and the replay shows it. That's the reason why you tried to trip him, because Harrison Ingram had kind of moved him out the way with his hands, 2 hands to his back. So how do you explain that?
I mean, I really think he was never going to say I tripped him because he's going to get suspended for a game. So
He should have just said next question or something to that effect. But no,
yeah,
he
I don't think
lied
he handled it
in the answer. So no way.
Yeah, he'd be a bad politician.
Very.
But he is a good basketball player. One of the other things out of this game was the interaction between the North Carolina team and the Duke fans afterwards. At the end of the game, Duke fans are throwing trash. There's a video from the Tar Heel Tribune that R.L. Bynum took of R.J. Davis doing pregame warm-up shots, and Duke fans are, saying some pretty derogatory terms towards R.J. Davis that I won't repeat on Out of Pocket with Michael Davis, but at the end of the game, UNC players waving by, talking trash, and kind of instigating and interacting, engaging with the Duke crowd. RL, you were there live for this. Do you think both were in the wrong? Do you think one was justified in their actions?
I don't know. It's hard to blame the UNC players for wanting to talk to Duke students if you hear some of the stuff that was yelled. In the video you're talking about, at one point, one of the students yelled at R.J. Davis, "I'm going to kill you." I mean, what's up with that? But the throwing the water bottles was out of control. I was right in the crossfire on that. There were drops of water that hit my laptop and tablet screens. Luckily, they work fine. But I think, but you'll notice when Pittsburgh did Blake Henson went up on top of a press table celebrating, and you could tell that the security was making sure that the UNC players didn't do that. I think Ingram said he got hit by a gumball.
Yeah. Who carries around gumballs?
There's still gumball machines in Cameron Indoor because it's been around forever and they won't touch it. Brendan, what did you think of the interaction post-game between the Tar Heels and the Duke fans?
I mean, I get that when you're the away team, you come into Cameron and you win, like that's a big story. Like you're going to talk to the students regardless of, even if they didn't say anything to RJ or any of the players post game, I would totally understand them going over, waving, and giving the students the business. I don't know if they expected but I mean, I guess throwing water and gumballs obviously is not warranted, but they're not going to go over there and get like kisses blown and hugs from the Duke students because I mean that's just not how it's going to happen. But I mean, also the Carolina players, they skipped the handshake line and all that. So you could really spin it like, was that the right thing for Chapel Hill players to do, to skip the handshake line and go over and engage directly with the students? So.
Well, Ted Valentine took a different approach when during one timeout right in front of me when they were yelling at Valentine. He just blew him a kiss.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, that reminds me with Ted Valentine, going back to the Cal Filipowski thing. If he didn't see what happened, why did he make a note to go over and talk to Cal Filipowski right before they started playing again after all that had happened?
Was that after Harrison talked to him?
I think, yeah, Harrison asked.
That may have been because Harrison asked about that. Harrison said he asked.
You think he went over and was like, did you trip him? He's like, no, I didn't do it. Of course, with everything when it comes with UNC and Duke, people tend to try to look at it through a microscope. When in actuality, you have to use context. And the reason why the Carolina players did this is because of what happened last year. Mark Mitchell went over to the Carolina fans on senior day last year in the Dean Dome and did the exact same thing. And nobody talks about that. They only talk about what the Carolina players did. It's in retaliation to what they did, which is in retaliation to what they did, which is in retaliation to what they did. So trying to frame this as who's at fault or why the Carolina players did this or whatever, why don't you ask the Duke player why he did it last year? It's just the nature of the rivalry. Now the fans are out of hand. There's no excuse for throwing stuff, water and stuff on the court. Ask Ron Artest what happens when you throw stuff at players on the court.
Yeah, but Mark Mitchell was, I know the video you're talking about. Duke posted slow-mo of it. I can Mark's up here like this waving, but he didn't go over to the risers behind the basket and like wasn't, a couple feet away, like where he could have a verbal altercation with the student. He was like in the middle of the floor, like talking to them, just waving at them. And then he went through the handshake line and shook their hands.
But they're always a couple of feet away from the fans in Cameron. That shouldn't really matter. Was he still on the court?
Yeah, Mark was in the middle of the court.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's almost worse. Like, you're trying to draw attention to yourself. They went over to the fans to interact with. He went to the middle of the court so everybody could see him doing the same thing. You see what I mean? Like, there's always a reaction and a reaction to these things in Carolina Duke. So like the Filipowski trip. Something might have happened before that to cause him to even do it. Like, it just, there's always both sides to this, which I understand. But to say that Carolina was in the wrong somehow for waving goodbye to fans that have been telling them to die like 2 hours before in the warm-up lines, I'm not mad at that at all.
I think there is a difference between being at center court and then waving, because there's all that space between it, and then a face-to-face interaction. I'm not saying, UNC players were wrong. I think they personally should have walked away, but it's an intense rivalry. That's why we love sports. And Des, I was looking forward to Out of Pocket return. Wasn't looking forward to your UNC fandom on the show, but wasn't going to cancel for that reason, even as much as I wanted to. You called one of my takes out of pocket earlier, and I believe none of my takes are out of pocket. So I want to bring a segment to Out of Pocket called Inside or Out. And this game, I'm going to give a take that I truly and firmly believe, and the panelists on the show are going to decide if it's in or out of pocket. And my take today is going along this Duke UNC theme is Coach K is the greatest basketball coach of all time. That is spanning men's sports, women's sports, college sports, professional basketball. That is spanning all of it. High school, Tobacco Road covers a lot of high school basketball sports, and they're all great. You should go watch them, but none of them are on the level of Coach K. Coach K retired with the most wins, 1,202. He has 5 national titles. He had 6 gold medals as the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. The way he was able to recruit players, the way that he was able to build a team and actually have them play. If you've ever seen his thing, he plays them like a fist. Okay, all 5 united together. 13 Final Four appearances, just the most in NCAA history. That is why I believe Coach K is the greatest basketball coach of all time. Brennan, you've watched him as much as I have. In pocket or out of pocket?
Very, very in pocket. I don't think it's really much of a question. I'm open to hearing like a John Wooden argument, but at the same time, John Wooden was coaching when the tournament, you had to win 2 or 3 games to win a national title. And, there wasn't as much parity across the NCAA as there is today or in the 40 years Mike Krzyzewski was coaching. So, and then I'm also good to hear like a Gino Auriemma argument too about him being the greatest. But I just think, which is totally like cool. Like I think he just passed K in wins, and so did Tara Vanderveer at Stanford. But Gino's got his 10 titles. But I just don't think, coaching in women's college basketball when Gino was at his peak, I just don't think there was enough parity or as much of a challenge to UConn as there was to Coach K in his 40 years at Duke while he won 5 titles.
R.L.?
I just think there's too much emphasis on declaring GOATs these days, like LeBron versus Michael. I mean, I'm going to go out because, I don't know, I'd prefer to just look at Krzyzewski as one of the greatest, along with Wooden, Dean Smith, Roy Williams, among others. Certainly, K's got more wins. Wooden has more titles. But you could argue that Smith was more innovative to the game over the years than Krzyzewski. I just don't think we need to single out one coach as being the GOAT.
Yeah, I'm kind of with RL on this one in terms of, I think a couple of years back when both Roy and Kay retired, I kind of settled on having a Mount Rushmore instead of having just one guy, because it's really hard to leave a Wooden off, or it's really hard to leave, other guys off. But if I had to, I wouldn't say that Kay is the greatest coach of all time. I'd say he's the most winningest coach of all time. Similar to, I wouldn't say LeBron is the greatest basketball player of all time. I'd say he's the most, that has the most points out of all basketball players of all time. There's a 24-second shot clock because of Dean Smith. Your team huddles after a foul to talk about the next play because of Dean Smith. Your players point at the person that gave them the assist on a fast break because of Dean Smith. Like all these little things in the college basketball today, we take for granted that Dean Smith implemented like over the course of his 40-plus year career. So I can't say that Kay's better than Dean when Kay was learning under Dean for most of his career. And Dean Smith owned Coach K, like when they were both still coaching against each other. So I can't really say that he's better than him. And we got a chance to see it. In terms of coaches, though, I'd probably go with Phil Jackson or Dean Smith before I would hit on Coach K. Phil Jackson he's the only NBA coach in history to have 3 three-peats. Like it just, to me, it's amazing to me. What does he have? 10, 11. He has 11 NBA titles. I would pick Phil before I would pick anybody, probably, really. And you did put pro in there. That's why.
Well, the one thing with Phil Jackson is he did have. Yeah, I mean, basketball through all levels, I still say Coach K. Phil Jackson had Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, the two most determined basketball players ever.
But they didn't win anything until they got Phil Jackson as their head coach. They were considered scorers. They were considered selfish. They were considered they weren't Magic. They weren't Bird. They weren't Isaiah. They weren't winners. And so
kept losing to the Pistons every year.
Yep. Phil is the reason why they got over the hump of the Pistons or the Spurs or whoever it was that both those teams were at. So I get that argument that he had the best players, but he got the best out of those best players and caused them to win those rings.
Now, you did mention, Dean Smith helping change the game. I started thinking of a Steph Curry comparison more than a LeBron or Jordan, because Curry has changed the game of basketball just with the way that he's shooting threes. And now everybody, whether you're going to your local YMCA or, you're watching, high school or college sports, everybody's shooting up a three rather than driving the hole, getting a two, or even hitting a mid-range. Like the mid-range shot is completely gone now.
Yeah, I would agree. And that, to me, points it even more towards a person like Dean Smith or whatever, because what rule has been changed because of Coach K's coaching? Like what style of play has changed because of what Coach K was doing at Duke?
Well, you could argue whether, it's for better or worse that the one and dones started with Calipari and Coach K. Kizzy commenting on our YouTube channel. You guys can interact with us on our YouTube channel because we are live during your lunch break, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
R.L. knows about little ants and
yeah, Kizzy's right. If you take it out of the basketball realm, I've covered a lot of women's UNC women's soccer in the last couple of years, and Anson Dorrance couldn't get much better than him. So I agree on that.
Now, okay, Shannon mentioned T.O. staying on the Star in Dallas. Was just asking for trouble. That's different than staying at any other basketball court or football stadium ever, because the Star is like a historic landmark.
It's still the middle of the field. That's what he's saying. It's the middle of the field. You're asking for the attention when you run to the middle of the field and do this. That means look at me, and that's what Mark Mitchell did.
Mark didn't run to the Star like T.O. did and slam the ball.
Maybe
down,
not his
his hands.
Yeah, he didn't do all that.
Mark was walking across the court and just waving his arm out on his way to the handshake line.
Still did it. I mean,
now one of the things that's cool about this is when we make takes and they're recorded and they're live, people are watching right now. Coach K is an awesome coach.
The only anybody here's disputing that. Yeah.
Nobody's disputing that. But one of the things is with recordings, people can go back and watch and be like, ooh, that aged really well. And for some reason, people always take my takes that didn't age well. And so we're going to introduce another segment called That Aged Well. And at the end of each show, we'll play this game, giving our predictions or takes for anything happening tonight, this week, or sometime in the future. But today I wanted to give everybody the same topic because I just wrote an article for Fans First Sports Network ranking the ACC tournaments teams from 15 to 1 who could win that tournament. And I wanted to pose it to you guys. Also, shout to Carson Williams. Carson will be back on Out of Pocket with Michael Davis this week. Stay tuned on social media for that one. But real quick, before we get out of here, Brendan, who do you think wins the ACC tournament this week and why?
I think it's going to be Duke. I think, Duke has always excelled in the ACC tournament. That's kind of that's where they're elite. I think they've won 22 ACC tournaments. I think it went from 21 to 22 with the one last year. They're reigning champions. I don't think, we haven't had a repeat champion in a long time, but I think, the league is really top heavy this year. And I think Carolina is definitely, the past two national champions have all lost at least once in March. So I think, given Carolina's record here, I think they're going to cool off a little bit. I think they're going to drop one. I think Wake is in their bracket. So I think that's going to be a tight one for them. I think Hunter Salas is going to play really well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get like a Duke versus Wake rematch in the final. And, Duke on a neutral floor is always going to have the advantage fan-wise.
Yep. R.L., who's winning the tournament this week?
Well, I think Duke and Carolina are clearly the best two teams. So I think a third game on Saturday night is likely, and wouldn't that be fun? I think the Tar Heels would probably win, but maybe not as easily as the first two times. If I was going to throw a dark horse in there, other than those two, I'd say Clemson might make a run.
Ooh, I like that. I'm with RL. I think we're aiming for a third Carolina Duke showdown, ACC final Saturday night. I'm picking the Tar Heels. I'm not leaving the horse I came in on. They've been the best team in the ACC the entire year from beginning to end. They were the last team to lose in the conference. They're number one in three-point defense. They're number one in defensive rebounding. They're number one in defensive efficiency. Don't ignore the stats. Believe what your eyes are showing you. Carolina is a real deal Final Four contender. And again, they're just a bad matchup for Duke. It's not that Duke is a bad team. It's just Duke matches up horribly with the personnel that Carolina has. They don't have a rim protector really. And they just can't seem to figure out who to stop. I'm going Carolina Duke Saturday. Carolina wins the ACC tournament.
For me, I wrote about this on Fans First Sports Network, but UNC is the first team since the 2017-2018 Virginia Cavalier team to win 17 conference games during the regular season. Last time that happened, Virginia did win the ACC tournament, but they also were the first ever 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed UMBC. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, North Carolina looked like the real deal, as much as it pains me to say. I think is North Carolina versus Duke. I think it's hard to beat Duke for a third straight time, but if there's any team that can do it right now, it is UNC. But watch out for Syracuse. Syracuse shouldn't be taken lightly. Judah Mintz, Malik Brown, Chris Bell could be a major factor in this tournament. So be sure to stay tuned. The rest of the week,
I was just going to watch out for Pitt. Pitt is the team, I think, because they got that last double bye. And if Duke's going to get to the ACC final, they're going to have to go through Pitt somewhere along the way. They already lost to them at home once this year. So keep an eye on Pitt as the dark horse, in my opinion, for winning the whole thing, to be honest.
Pitt is in Carolina's side of the bracket.
Oh, they're the 4. That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So they'd be 1-4 and 2-3. So it's Virginia that they would have to probably see. Well, Virginia can't score more than 50 points. So,
so UNC might be the team to watch out for Pitt this tournament. But
no, we beat Pitt. We're fine. We're good. Yeah, we can play with Pitt. You guys have a problem with Pitt, so we'll see. Maybe Duke Pitt on Saturday.
Interestingly, Vegas has Duke as a plus 180 and Carolina as a plus 190. But then again, Vegas had Carolina had Duke favor on Saturday night as well. So
5.5 points too. I was like, what is going on here? What do they know that we don't know?
Wow.
So, yeah.
But we are out of time on Out of Pocket with Michael Davis. We'll be back Tuesday afternoon, 12:30 during your lunch break, as well as Thursday and Friday. Tomorrow, we're talking about some big NFL news. Russell Wilson signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. T. Higgins wanting out of Cincinnati. Baker Mayfield re-signs with Tampa. And who knows what's going to happen over the next 24 hours. We're going to have Shan Smith and Mike Mealy on tomorrow afternoon in the roundtable talking NFL. We might slip some WWE in there, but who knows? There's going to be a lot to talk about. For myself, Michael Davis, the host, it's been Brendan O'Neill, R.L. Bynum from Tar Heel Tribune, and producer Desmond Johnson. For Out Pocket with Michael Davis, it's returned live today. Go have a great day.